This is my latest project. It's a Delta Homecraft 16-inch scroll saw. This was my grandfather's, and I've had this for 30 years. Carried it around from place to place. Never really needed to use it, but I kept it anyway, thinking, well, one, it was my grandfather's, and two, that I might need it someday. And that someday is now. So we're gonna go through, and I noticed it did work the last time I used it, but now this is seized. So go ahead and take everything apart, clean it out. I'm sure the gaskets will need to make new gaskets, and check out the bearings, see what they're like. I think everything, I'm missing the cover. I'll probably get one of those on eBay. I think all the other parts on it are here and work. So it should be, hopefully, a simple restoration. First part is going to go ahead and take some of the light off. Take this inside out. Probably need to drain. I'm not sure if I can drain what's in there. It's probably now solid. So let's get cracking on it. I think what makes most sense is to take the table off. You turn this, you have to kind of push it up because it doesn't clear the bottom. You take that out, and then we've got a spring that goes down in it, and then looks like a washer on top. And I think maybe this lifts out. Yeah, so it just lifts out. Okay, that's pretty standard there. We'll probably go ahead and take these two off, clean that out. I'm going to go ahead and clean this out, get rid of the spider webs. And we'll give it a good coat of paint before we put it all back in. These will need to be greased up. It looks like that's the remainder of a blade in there. So we'll start taking this down, and I think we'll take this off. We'll go ahead and get the light out of the way first, get some of these things off, and then take that apart. So the light's got a carriage style bolt at the top. It locks in there. It's got a lock nut, a lock washer, and then a nut on the bottom. And it's saying that this just slides down. Turn it, rotate it. One thing I read on this, and we'll find out if it's true, and that I never knew the few times I did use it, is that supposedly these can be rotated 90 degrees. So that changes your depth of cut. Instead of just being 16 inches into the center of what you can cut, I think, from what I read, maybe not on this model, but you can rotate these and then feed in like you would a bandsaw. So we're going to go ahead, take this out, and then look at taking this off and see what we have in there. Well, just for kicks, we'll try to drain it and see if anything is still liquid after all this time. So yeah, I took this out. It's got a little gasket on it, and no liquids. Not a huge surprise. I don't know if it's leaked out, and there's certainly evidence that it could have leaked out, or if it's just kind of dried up in the bottom. This has gone through a countless number of apartments, multiple homes, sort of been carried around everywhere. Figure out how to get that off. Yeah, usually there's like should be a little hole somewhere around this thing. I don't see one. I think I'm going to go ahead and just switch around to the front. Take that off. See what we got on that side. noting that we probably need to take this off. It looks like that's going to be on with, yeah, they got a little Allen screw in there. Same as the back. There you are indeed. Okay, so all the front and the back are the same. Okay, so I went and unscrewed this, and I tried to turn. You can see it turned the shaft a little bit, but really what that did was knock this loose. So I'm going to go ahead and wiggle this out. And then you go ahead and zoom in on that. Okay, so there, you can see that right there. That bottom came right out of right there, and it was oriented up at that time. So we'll see, I'm gonna tap over here and see if the other side will come out. And yeah, that is bone dry. What's in there has dried up, but it certainly doesn't have anything in it either. Okay, so from here, I was able to tap out the back cover. So of course I can't pull that out for now. It looks like, let me pull this over here. Okay, so if you remember, this was the part we had here. This went up, and it goes in this little thing right here, and it looks like this would slide back and forth if it were not completely dried. And then this goes up and down. And so I think as this guy turns this way, it goes up, and then this follows over here to the left, and then down, and then back over to the right, so forth and so on. And I think that's how that works. Yeah, and this is fun. So look at all of that. This is maybe, I don't know, ½ inch in there, 3/8 anyway. So go ahead and get all this cleaned out, loosen that up, and then gonna need to make a gasket for both sides of this, and I think it should be able to go back on that. So we'll take that apart, clean everything up, get it painted, and then put it back together. Okay, so a neat detail I couldn't see because it's knocked out. This was the part that goes up and down right here, and it's got this little fin sort of that comes out that slides in this slot on the back here to keep that from moving back and forth. So that's pretty neat, and I'm sure, looks like maybe there's a hole there, and I bet we can loosen the screw on that, then pull this top out, and then pull that out. So that's the plan, and if that's any different, I'll update you. Okay, so right, there is a set screw in there that obeys the first law, and that is if it's round, and that the shaft in there is round, then there'll be a set screw. And this is a good illustration of the second law, and that is, if there's one set screw, why not just have two? So I have to pull that one out before we pull that off. Normally in the past, this would be where I would get the BFH out and a big pry bar and start pulling that thing off the shaft and ruin it. So at least we've learned. Okay, so both set screws are out, but it's not budging. So I've got some coil on it, and while that soaks in, I thought we'd take a look at this. You can see that indeed, these rotate. You loosen that right there, and this rotates around. The one at the top isn't quite that special. Just unscrew this, pull it off, and then rotate it and put it back. So it's true. This model, this is one of the earlier ones. I think He probably got this in late 40s, I would imagine, maybe early 50s, but sometime around that time. I've got some. I think I actually had the receipt somewhere, so I'll look that up and I'll throw that in either in the comments or I'll mention it later. But these do rotate, so you put a screw in the screwdriver in there, turn that, and then rotate this, and then you can do the same with the top one. So we're gonna let that soak in, and then hopefully we'll be able to pull that out. Okay, so I took the plunger out. I got a detail to show on this. This is little guys that go in there, and then they hold the blade in there like that. This one here falls out easily, but I couldn't get this one out, and now that it's out, it's obvious why. It has that little thing that actually sticks into that hole. So you kind of pull it away and then push it up a little bit, and then it'll come down. But if you try to push it out from the back side without that pulling that out of the hole, you'll just shear that off. So that's potential break there. And I think how this works is that the hole on that side right there where the screw goes in will go in and hit that, and that holds, that pushes these two together to hold the blade in. Okay, so another detail about getting this off the shaft. First you gotta make sure you take both of those set screws out. And then I had to use a little bit of coil to free that up, but then I still couldn't figure out how to get that to stay on. So there's this hole in the shaft, and I don't know why that's there, but you can put something in there to hold it, and then you can move, that gives you the ability to turn it from there. And then once you get it down a little bit, well then you can start cleaning the shaft up and clean it all the way to the bottom and then pull the shaft out. More details. The set screw here, the slotted one, and then you can just tap this out from the bottom and it comes out. Interesting design on this. I'm not sure why it has two areas where the set screw would go in, and there's only one set screw on that. Big tip on that is you can look at the set screw when it comes out, and the odds of it being the only one or the last one are pretty high if the end is rounded, where it would go in. And then one more detail, and I'm not going to do this, but because these bearings are fine, but it looks like you could push these bronze bushings out. See, there's another one in there because on the bottom it has this thing here, and I bet you can tap that out from inside. Probably sticking something down through the hole, through the focus. Come on, through the bottom there. Tap that out, and then I bet you can press both of those bushings out. So it looks like if you wanted to replace those bushings, you could. I will measure them and include that in a minute. Okay, so I measured that. It's 5/8 inside diameter and 3/4 outside diameter. So you could go to like say bronze bearings bushings, excuse me, bronzebushings.com and order that, and they'll send it to you. I mean, it's probably less than $10, and then cut those and put them in there. So I took this out and looked at how it was put together. You've got two flange bronze bushings on each side. If you can look in there, you can see that they're separate. One pressed in from this side, one from that side. It might be a little difficult to get them pressed out. Well, the first one anyway. But you could certainly press those out and replace it. And then on the other end, you have a washer, but it's got an interesting configuration here where it's flat on one side, and then in the casting, it's got a little mark to hold that washer, I guess to keep that washer from spinning. I guess this is a counterweight, since this is going to be off center, and the center of rotation here. I guess that's a counterweight on that. I think it also probably dips down into the oil bath at the bottom and slings that around. And so just about done getting all this cleaned up. You're going to go ahead and paint it and then start putting it back together. Alright, so the heater in the paint booth has been running since sunup. So it's almost 100 out here in the paint booth. So I got everything masked off. I'm going to paint everything in one go. I do one coat of primer and then 3 coats of the paint. And just barely wait for them to sort of dry between that. You can't let it dry too much, or the paint will react with the fumes it gives off when it's drying. I'm gonna go ahead and get these painted. Okay, so all the paint's dry. I'll probably usually like to wait maybe 3 days before I put everything back together. The paint's still a little bit soft. It's just Rust-Oleum. Make sure I don't scratch it as I put it back together. I've got to go and clean up all these other pieces, wire brush them. I'll look at maybe getting an LED light bulb for the light. And I got to make a wood base. I'm going to need to buy, I think I'm going to get 3-step pulleys so I can change the speed. I plan to do metal cutting, wood cutting. I gotta find some blades for it. This one does not take the pins, so I'll need to look for that. Alright, so that's it. Oh, I flattened the table out some. I was not able to get in this area, and then this area back in here was not able to get to that. But, I mean, it's flat enough. It's probably one of the flatter ones I have in the shop. Alright, so that's it. Let this dry for a few days, and then clean up the rest of the bright work and the rest of the mechanicals. That came nice and clean inside, so be ready to put back together. Okay, so everything's painted, pretty much cleaned up, getting ready to put things back together. A couple details. I'm not going to film putting all of it back together, but just some interesting notes. I decided to cut the gaskets out of rubber. I know that this thing leaked from day one. The paper gaskets, I could have cut some of those. I could have used a hybrid material, but I'm going to go ahead and go with this rubber. It's a 16th inch thick, and see how that works. This guy right here speculated on this. Yes, it is the counterbalance for the eccentric, and yes, it does provide splash lubrication. You fill this up to the level there. That's the fill hole. You're supposed to use 30 weight, fill it up to that point. 30 weight right now. And you don't want to use detergent oils because, and you don't really use anything for automotive because of the way those work. Those capture dirt and suspend it and let a filter take that out. Of course, there's no filter on this, so you want the other oils that will just kind of capture that and sink to the bottom and hold it there. So I'm going to go with the compressor oil on that. That should work fine. I'm going to go ahead and put everything back together. If I find some interesting notes on how it fits, I'll be sure to include that. I got the motor there. I'm probably going to put, this has enough room, this goes on the other side, but it has enough room to put a pulley step sheave on that. So I'll probably do that and do the same thing for the motor. I'm pretty sure that's the motor I'm going to use. I'm not 100% positive. Once it is, I'll probably paint it. One thing I did forget to do was clean the light up, and I want to find an LED light to go on there. I'm going to get that cleaned up, put an LED light in there. So I think most of it is ready, and I'm going to start putting it back together. Alright, so here's one detail. I've gone ahead and filled this up with oil to the edge here. If you remember, I pulled those 2 set screws out, and at another point I wondered why there was a hole in the shaft, and there's actually 2 holes. And if you look, you can see if I can get it all the way down here. Yeah, okay, so you can see that it goes straight through. So I believe the set screw goes into that upper hole, the second one on the shaft, and that's going to set the height of the position on that shaft correctly. So we're going to screw that first step screw in. Let's see if I can get that in the camera. And then go in through that hole, and then one on top of it. Alright, so that did work. the bigger set screw with the small point does go in through that second hole on the shaft. I guess maybe they use this shaft with another machine, and that's where the other one went. And then I think the second set screw just serves as to lock it in place. So I think that's probably why they have the two on there. All right, and so then you have the fins back on that. The fins are going to ride in this. The hole where you fill it in, fill in the fluid does go on the bottom. I already have it filled up. On the other side, you've got this right here. It goes in right there, and then our eccentric slide in that hole right there and move around. And then I've cleaned up that shaft some, and then I have this end goes on. See, it's got the double bronze bearings on that, and so they're right on 2 points on that shaft out here. So I'm going to go ahead and put those together, and that will finish out that area. So I had everything buttoned up, and I didn't fill it up all the way because I figured I was likely to forget something, and I did. As I got down toward the end of the bag of parts, I found this little guy, and then I remembered that he goes on this just like that. That slides down, and then there's a little notch there at the bottom that keeps that in place right there. So yeah, you got to get that on there, and put that's a spacer in for this bearing here, and that keeps, that little notch keeps that from spinning. So put that back on, and hope that was the last one. I went through all the parts again. I think everything's accounted for. I'm going to put the plunger assembly back together. I actually had to go back through the video I shot earlier and look at it several times to figure out how it goes back together. So I thought I'd just do this real quick. The spring goes on this plunger. The smaller end of the spring goes up at the top. This piece down here I had mostly correct. The thumb screw goes in this side right here. These sort of like clamps on the blade, that goes in that hole. So the thumb screw screws up against that hole. I said it one way and then I said it another way in the earlier video, and then this one goes on this side, and then that screw goes in and holds that still. And then you put that unit in here, leave the thumb screw off, so it will go and slide through the hole. One more detail. I talked earlier about how you could rotate these to do basically a rip cut, so the blade's going this way. You feed it in like you would a bandsaw. And I had thought that this one on top, you pulled it off and turned it, but that's not correct. It's actually a little bit easier than that. If you look at this here, it has 2 holes there where the set screw goes in, and then 2 holes where the air gets pumped out. And so going in the normal way that we'd use a scroll saw goes in like that. I'll bring that up here. And then you put the set screw in and hold it. So if you wanted to change that to where you could use it like a bandsaw, you would just take the set screw out and go and turn it, and then put the set screw back in, and then that's all already rotated. So you just need to rotate the bottom one, and you use this big set screw up here to turn that. So it's a little bit easier than I thought. Alright, so everything is back assembled, and I found this great stand on Craigslist. I think it was an old, I think the previous owner said it was an old Craftsman scroll saw stand. I've turned it around. I thought it fit saw better with the narrow end in the front, and then I cut a hole in the top and put the motor down on the bottom. That'll make it easier for me to change the pulley sizes and move the motor back and forth. I'll look at getting step pulleys for it. I'm not even sure what pulleys I need for what speed and what I'm cutting at. So until I really get that figured out, I'm just gonna change pulleys. So that gives me a good way of doing that. It's turned out really nice. Put it on wheels so I can move it around. Unfortunately, while I have a big shop, it's got a lot of stuff in it, and I'm constantly having to move things around. One of the things I did that I thought was a really good idea at the time, but maybe not such a good idea, is this switch was broken. I couldn't actually find the right thing to go on it. So I wired that down into the motor and then off the switch. I put a switch in right here, and that switches to hot on this. Again, I've used just a extension cord. I think it's a 14 gauge, and it's got that wired up there, and then ran the. You can see that the light cord goes down in through into the bottom, and then it's right off the motor. So I'm probably going to find the replacement for that switch and then wire that back in on the other side of that switch so that I can turn this off and on. And the reason why is fitting the blades, you really need this light on when you pop this to look down in there to get the blade in. So you really need the light before the motor's on. So I'll make that change. The table turned out really good. I resurfaced it just a little bit. I could not work out this area. This had this spot's low, and this spot back here is low. But the rest of it's flat. Certainly flat enough for cutting wood on a scroll saw. I will probably build a little belt guard here. This should be pretty easy to do. This I think the old Craftsman had a little box that went in right here where you stored your scroll saw blades. So I'll probably make use of these two holes to go ahead and build a cover over the pulley there. That's about it. Like I said, I'm really happy with how it came out. You get a little bit wider view of it. I think my grandfather would be really proud and really happy with it. It's fun to see something that's been passed around this long and back running again. It cuts fantastic, of course. So that pretty much wraps this one up. Hope you enjoyed it.